Very good evening and welcome to News Connect. In the next one, I will get you all the latest news and updates. Top focus would be horrific train accident in Odisha's Balasore. Rescue work has been completed and Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also reached there at the Balasore to take stock of the situation. We'll also discuss Shangri-La dialogue. Eminent guests will be joining us for the discussion. We'll be going across to Singapore now, also where the Shangri-La dialogue is taking place. National updates also. In sports, Lakshya Sen taking on Thailand qualifier in the semi-finals. All of this and much more. My name is Abhishek Mahajan. First up, the headlines. Death toll in Balasore train accident rises to 261. Over 900 injured in the tragic incident. Rescue operations complete. PM Narendra Modi reaches Balasore in Odisha to take stock of the situation at the accident site. PM to also visit the hospital where injured are being treated. Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav visits accident site, orders high-level probe. An independent inquiry also to be done by Rail Safety Commissioner. Negotiators of around 170 countries agree to develop a first draft by November to curb plastic pollution. Committee calls for a preparation of a zero draft text of a legally binding instrument ahead of a third round of talks in Nairobi with the aim of finalizing the treaty in 2024. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin rebukes China for refusing to hold military talks, leaving the superpowers deadlocked over Taiwan and territorial disputes in South China Sea. Calls China to open dialogue, says U.S.-China talks key to avoiding conflict. China accuses United States of creating confrontation in the Asia-Pacific region, says an unstable Taiwan is in U.S. interest, alleges U.S. of destabilizing Taiwan. And in Thailand Open Badminton, Indian star shuttler Lakshya Sen to take on Thailand's Kunlavut Vititsorn in the semi-finals of men's singles in Bangkok today. Let's start with the top story. In one of the deadliest rail accidents, at least 261 people were killed when two passenger trains derailed and hit a goods train in Balasore district of Odisha on Friday evening. 7 NDRF, 5 ODRFs, 24 fire service units and local police and volunteers carried out the rescue operation. Now the rescue operation has been completed and the restoration procedure is on. 26 people died and around 900 were injured in a horrific 3-train collision in Balasore, the country's deadliest rail accident in over many years. Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav said a high-level committee will be set up to investigate the train crash. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reached Balasore in Odisha, where the tragic incident took place on Friday evening. He will take stock of the situation and later will also visit the hospital in Cuttack where injured people are being treated. And earlier on Saturday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired a high-level meeting to review the situation in relation to the rail accident in Odisha's Balasore. The aspects relating to rescue, relief and medical attention to those affected were discussed in the review meeting. It was attended by Union Home Minister Amit Shah, Cabinet Secretary Rajiv Gauba, Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister P.K. Mishra, Union Home Secretary Ajay Kumar Bhalla, NDRF Chief S.N. Pradhan and other senior officials. And Union Minister Dharmendra Pradhan arrived at the accident site in Odisha's Balasore to take stock of the situation. Talking to media, he said the unfortunate incident happened due to some technical reasons. An inquiry has been ordered by the railways. He informed that PM Modi will also visit the accident site. In fact, PM Modi is already there. And Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, who is on the accident site to take stock of the situation, informed that a detailed high-level inquiry will be conducted and the Rail Safety Commissioner will also carry out an independent inquiry into the accident deemed as one of the worst the country has witnessed in the last 15 years.
बहुत ही बड़ी ट्रैजिक एक्सीडेंट है ये और सभी दिवंगत आत्माओं के साथ हमारी प्रार्थना है। उन सभी परिवारों के साथ मेरी प्रार्थना है जिनके परिवार का मेंबर इस ट्रेजेडी में चले गए। कंपेंसेशन का अमाउंट कल रात में रेलवे की तरफ से डिक्लेयर हो गया था। एक हाई लेवल कमेटी भी ऑलरेडी डिक्लेयर हो गई है जो कि इस पूरे एक्सीडेंट में इंक्वायरी करेगी। कमिश्नर रेल सेफ्टी को भी बुलाया गया है, वो भी इंक्वायरी करेंगे और इस प्रॉब्लम के इस एक्सीडेंट के रूट कॉज में जाएंगे। किस कारण से ये प्रॉब्लम हुई वो पूरा का पूरा टेक्निकल से और किस भी कारण से हुई हो वो समझा जाएगा।
And President Draupadi Murmu, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Union Ministers and leaders cutting across the party lines expressed anguish at the train crash. Railway Minister has meanwhile announced an ex gratia to the victims of this unfortunate train accident in Odisha, as the amount in the case of death is 10 lakh, 2 lakh towards grievous and 50,000 for minor injured. Odisha and Tamil Nadu declared one-day state mourning in view of the horrific train crash. Meanwhile, several helpline numbers have been issued after the train accident in Balasore. Howrah helpline number is 033 263 82217. This is the Howrah helpline number 033 263 82217. And Kharagpur helpline number is 89720 73925 and 933 239 2339. So these are the Balasore helpline number 8249591559 and 7978418322. Shalimar helpline number is 9903370746. And if talk about the emergency control room, the number is, so this is the Shalimar helpline number 9903370746 and the emergency control room number is 033 2214 3526 and 2253 5185. All right, this is the Howrah helpline number. We'll repeat that again for you: 033 2638 2217. And the Kharagpur helpline number is 89720 73925 and 933 239 2339. Balasore helpline number is 8249 591559 and 79784 18322. And this is the Shalimar helpline number 99033 70746. You can note down these numbers, and emergency control room number is 033 2214 3526 and 22535 185. An East Coast zone has meanwhile cancelled a few trains and diverted many others due to the train accident. So many trains have been diverted after this horrific 3-train collision in Odisha's Balasore. Rescue operations have been completed and the restoration process is on. After the tragic train accident in Balasore, people have queued up at the hospital in area to donate blood for the injured. as the Balasore district hospital looked like a war zone with the injured lying on stretchers in the corridor and rooms bursting at their seams with extra beds propped up. So these are the visuals that we are showing you of the hospital in Cuttack where the injured are being treated. People are queued up to donate blood and give them help, any assistance that they need. And condolence messages poured in from all over the world expressing the heartfelt condolences to the people and the government of India. UNGA president grieved over the incident and said that he is deeply saddened to hear the news of the train crash in Odisha, and he prayed for the victims and their families. While US State Department's Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs also condoles train accident in Odisha's Balasore and expressing the heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims and praying for a speedy recovery to the injured. Foreign Minister of Maldives said that he is deeply saddened to hear the news of the tragic train accident in Odisha, whereas High Commissioner of Singapore also expressed condolence and said that their thoughts are with the families of the bereaved and injured. All right, shifting focus now, we'll talk about Shangri-La dialogue which is being held in Singapore. US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin rebuked China on Saturday for refusing to hold military talks, leaving the superpowers deadlocked over Taiwan and territorial disputes in the South China Sea. Speaking at the Shangri-La dialogue, Asia's top security summit, Lloyd Austin said Beijing's refusal to hold talks at the meeting undermined efforts to maintain peace in a region where the two rivals are increasing their military firepower. US Secretary of Defense reaffirmed that the US will continue to stand by its allies and partners as they uphold their rights and maintain vigorous, responsible presence across the Indo-Pacific. Lloyd Austin's comments come at a tense time for relations between the US and China, as China recently rejected an offer from Austin to meet at the summit in Singapore, citing US sanctions on Chinese officials and companies.
A cordial handshake over dinner is no substitute for a substantive engagement. And the more that we talk, the more we can avoid the misunderstandings and miscalculations that could lead to crisis or conflict. You know, I am deeply concerned that the PRC has been unwilling to engage more seriously on better mechanisms for crisis management between our two militaries. But I hope that will change, and soon. So we are determined to maintain peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. And so are a number of countries around the world, and that number continues to grow. President Biden has been clear. The United States does not seek a new Cold War, and competition must not spill over into conflict. And the region should never be split into hostile blocs.
A senior Chinese military official told reporters on the sidelines of a security summit in Singapore on Saturday that comments by United States Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin risk creating confrontation in the Asia-Pacific region.
Try to, provide security to his allies, sometimes his partners, but he put other countries in the opposite and targeted other countries. So it makes this region more confrontational and more, challenging and difficult for regional countries to communicate with each other.
And Chinese military officials said that an unstable Taiwan is in US interest, and that's why they are making efforts to make Taiwan unstable.
In the past few decades, the Taiwan Strait was pretty stable. The US wants to destroy this stability. They want to put things and they keep changing constantly. So what is the reason behind their aspiration to change? They have their own interest. A stable Taiwan region is not beneficial to the US's strategies. So they want an unstable Taiwan region so its military can come partake in a lot of action and then prove that all these actions have a legal basis right. In this way, they can sell a lots of weapons to Taiwan and make a lots of money. Otherwise, where would they have such an opportunity?
Earlier speaking at the opening of the Shangri-La Dialogue Security Summit, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said he supported US President Joe Biden's efforts to open channels of communication with China. Albanese called for greater engagement between the United States and China, saying a breakdown in dialogue between the superpowers could have devastating consequences for the world. Listen in.
The renewed efforts from President Biden's administration to establish reliable and open channels of communication between the governments of the United States of America and the People's Republic of China. I want to recognise the very important speech that Prime Minister Li gave in China recently on this subject, where he said this: "Big powers have a heavy responsibility to maintain stable and workable relations with one another, because the alternative, the silence of the diplomatic deep freeze, only breeds suspicion, only makes it easier for nations to attribute motive to misunderstanding, to assume the worst of one another."
All right, we'll go across to Singapore, where DD India's correspondent Patrick Falk is joining us, and we are also joined by Ashok Sajjanhar, who is former ambassador to Kazakhstan, Sweden and Latvia. If we can have them on the screen, very warm welcome both of you. Patrick, if I can come to you first, the annual Shangri-La Dialogue is taking place in Singapore. I mean, second day today, but without a meeting between the US and China. I mean, what is the latest that you can tell us?
Well, just picking up on what the Australian Prime Minister said last night, he said that without the pressure valve of dialogue, there is much greater risk for unintended actions and reactions. And there really has been a lot of focus over the last couple of days about this lack of a meeting taking place between the US and China and not keeping communication lines open. And in Secretary Austin's speech today as well, he also talked about this thing that's really created a buzz here in Singapore, about the fact that he and his Chinese counterpart Li Shangfu were sat at a table together at a dinner for delegates, and they shook hands and they're reported to have exchanged pleasantries, but they won't of course be meeting in an official capacity because the Chinese side has turned that down. He said that cordial handshakes are really no substitute for substantive engagement. So that is something that the Chinese officials may have found it difficult to listen to over the last couple of days, because there has been a lot of criticism towards the Chinese side for turning down this request. There has, I should say, also been a response from the Chinese embassy in Washington saying that it agrees that dialogue is important, but it's not willing to engage when the US is trying to suppress China and it's sanctioning its officials and companies and institutions. We are going to get to hear more about it in all likelihood tomorrow when Defence Minister Li Shangfu makes his speech here in Singapore, and will no doubt be addressing a lot of the other criticism that China's had to face here over the last couple of days.
Right, Patrick, stay with us. Meanwhile, I'll go to Ambassador Sajjanhar. Good to have you, Ambassador. I mean, like Patrick also said, I mean, although Chinese Defence Minister Li Shangfu and Austin, they were not expected to speak to each other, but the two defence chiefs did briefly exchange words, like he's also mentioning, and shook hands before being seated at Friday's opening dinner. I mean, a lot of buzz around that. I mean, how do you see this? What's your analysis?
Yeah, you're right. I think really the takeaway from this meeting is that no interaction between Lloyd Austin and the Chinese defense minister took place.
Yeah.
And of course, both the leaders were sitting at the same table, and it was Lloyd Austin who took the initiative to walk around the table and to have a handshake with the Chinese defense minister. But as he said very clearly that, a cordial handshake at the dinner table is no substitute for substantive engagement. So I think this is definitely at the time when tensions are rising, and we have seen tensions rising on account of the belligerent stance that has been taken by China in the Taiwan Straits. We have seen what has been happening, the Chinese coercion and assertiveness in the South China Sea, and also, of course, what the North Koreans have been doing. So I think there has been tension on multiple fronts in these areas, and Shangri-La Dialogue is the ideal venue and an opportunity where all the concerned leaders are present, and they should get together. And this is what Lloyd Austin said, that, you know, all time is a good time for meeting and discussing problems, and the best time, of course, is now to for the two leaders to meet and interact and try to find solutions to this increasing tension. We've also seen, Abhishek, that there has been this very aggressive maneuvers by the Chinese aircraft when an American aircraft was flying in, in its own, in the open seas region. So I think there is a possibility of accidents taking place if communications and dialogues are restricted. So definitely the need of the hour is to engage in conversations, particularly since there is tensions are increasing.
Right, Ambassador Sajjanhar, I mean, got your point. I'll come back to you. But Patrick, again, I mean, like Ambassador is also mentioning, I mean, Lloyd Austin also had said that they needed to communicate, I mean, to stop dangerous encounters between the military aircraft. And like you also said, a lot of buzz around that handshake that took place between Lloyd Austin and Li Shangfu.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
No, I was saying that a lot of, like you were also mentioning that a lot of buzz around, I mean, the handshake between Li Shangfu and Lloyd Austin, and Lloyd Austin also said initially that they needed to communicate to stop any dangerous encounters between the military aircraft.
Yeah, I mean, that has really been the consensus among many of the speakers that have been delivering speeches here over the last couple of days. But it is also worth noting that many of the countries that are involved in the dialogue, particularly Western countries, have been talking about further engagement in this region, and notably Anita Anand, the Defence Minister for Canada, announced today that Canada would be significantly increasing its military in the Indo-Pacific. It's going to increase the number of warships it has in the region from 2 ships to 3 ships. It's also going to be significantly increasing its amount of military participation in this region. And so overall, there really is a commitment from different countries, one would have to say, aimed at de-risking the tensions across this region, which one would say, many people would argue, has come about because of China's increased militarization. The summit, this dialogue really is designed for officials and defense leaders to get together and debate and discuss all these issues. And, you know, the unfortunate situation that many leaders have alluded to is the fact that China isn't willing to communicate with some of the key countries that it is directly in conflict with.
But if you talk about the global impact, I mean, what are the implications in the sense, the impact that it can have, both of them not having a dialogue at all? Situation can, I mean, very, very quickly spiral out of control.
Well, again, there is this consensus that it could lead to disastrous consequences. I mean, no doubt it is going to have a very high economic cost, but more importantly than that, really, it could have an incredibly significant human cost as well. And it's worth noting the role that ASEAN plays as a sort of middleman to try and dial down some of these tensions, and not just because of the fact that the dialogue is taking place here, but also because ASEAN has such a major stake in any sort of conflict that might break out, not just economically, but again because of its geographical location, and with all these tensions that are taking place, not just in the South China Sea, in the Taiwan Strait, and also in the East China Seas as well.
Right, Patrick, we'll end it here. Thank you for giving us your vital inputs. Right, Ambassador Sajjan Har, if you are still here with us, I mean, what do we say in the sense that, like Patrick was also mentioning, Chinese Defense Ministry blamed the US for the refusal, saying the responsibility of the ongoing tension which is going on between the two countries' military lies entirely with the US side. I mean, relation between the two countries have been increasingly strained in recent months, especially, if we talk about the US House Speaker, former US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's trip to the self-governing island of Taiwan last August, and we all know what happened in the South China Sea.
Yeah, you're right. But, I think we have to keep in mind that this is not the first time that a Speaker of the US House of Representatives visited Taiwan. There have been earlier instances also. So its responsibility for ratcheting up the tensions lies squarely with China. And let's face it, it's not only this case. The fact that China has been occupying the islands in the South China Sea, which according to the UN Convention on Law of the Seas 1982, UNCLOS 82, they don't belong to it. They fall in the exclusive economic zone of other countries, whether it is the Paracel Island, whether it's the Spratly Island, it is the Mischief Reef, it's the Scarborough Shoals. So China is the one that has, completely rejected the decision of the Permanent Court of Arbitration that came out in July 2016 and has continued to illegally occupy these islands, to militarize these islands, and even to construct artificial islands. So I don't think that China is right when it says that it is the United States which is trying to raise tensions and which is trying to create problems. Not at all. On the contrary, it is the rights of the other countries, and that is why there is about 50 to 60% of global trade which goes through the South China Sea, which uses the sea lanes of communication through the South China Sea and East China Sea. And China, by declaring that it is a part of the Chinese, like it's a Chinese lake, so to say, and that countries will not have the right of navigation, of the right of overflights, while these are global commons. So I think it doesn't make sense for China to say that. I think it's completely wrong when it says that the United States is responsible. So under the circumstances, in any case, there should be a conversation, because there are possibilities of miscalculations that could take place. There are possibilities of accidents that could take place. And to obviate all this, I think it is definitely required that both sides have a conversation, and a serious conversation, substantive conversation. And, just a handshake around dinner time is definitely not a substitute enough for that.
Right, and also, Ambassador, the Shangri-La dialogue comes at an important moment in Southeast Asian politics. For smaller Southeast Asian countries, the dialogue is chance to hash out a foreign policy and engineer informal meetings between officials on the sidelines of closed-door talks, and more than a quarter of the summit's delegates hail from the region.
Absolutely, you're right. Every time, whether when we are talking about the Indo-Pacific or we are talking about discussions in the Quad, we are always maintaining the centrality of the ASEAN countries, that, they will, their interests, their security, their stability, the prosperity, that will be right at the center of all the discussions. And of course, these countries do not want that these two big powers should have any altercation here, so that all these countries are also required to take sides. And because all these countries really depend, their prosperity depends upon trade and production. And they don't want the trade to be disturbed in any manner. So in that context, they definitely would like that there is peace that is maintained. And of course, they had a good meeting. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin had, under the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting plus, he had a good meeting with all the ASEAN counterparts, Ministers of Defense who are participating. And all of them, particularly the Singaporean Defense Minister, he said that they very much welcome the engagement of the United States in this region, because that is an indication of stability and security. And of course, there are a number of countries in the region like Japan, like Philippines, like Australia, like Taiwan, with which the United States has an ally relationship, has defense partnership.
Right.
So I think the presence of United States has been there, and it is welcomed as far as the local countries, the countries of the region are concerned.
And the other issues that will be discussed in the Shangri-La dialogue, I mean, the war in Ukraine, I mean, despite being a hemisphere away, is also on the agenda. I mean, most Southeast Asian countries have chosen to remain silent on Russia's invasion.
No, you're right, Abhishek, but you know, I don't think any meeting on any issue, whether it is security, defense, or it is economy, you know, no meetings can take place without discussion, without a reference to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And the reason for that is that, as you very correctly said, that the war is taking place, you know, in the other hemisphere. And maybe it's taking place in a smaller region in terms of territorial area. It is not a very large area in which the war is taking place, just about 20% eastern part of Ukraine, where basically the fighting is taking place. But the impact of that conflict is being felt the world over, whether it is in terms of the supply chain disruptions, whether it is in terms of the shortages of food, of energy, of fertilizers, whether it is in the area of you know, the inflation, or the area of debt that is taking place, particularly as far as developing countries are concerned. And in the ASEAN also, we have a large number of developing countries, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar. All these are developing countries which have been facing the brunt of the impact of the conflict. So obviously that has been an issue, and the position of the United States has been that if Russia is not challenged, then it would make you know, a powerful country going into a weaker country and occupying its territory, occupying its area. That would be normalized, and that is definitely against the UN principles, the UN Charter, and it is violative of the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of smaller countries.
Ambassador, in that context only, I mean, to add to that, US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin invoked Russia's war on Ukraine as a reminder that security in Asia can't be taken for granted.
No, absolutely. I think he mentioned it now, and we know that the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has also been mentioning that if Russia is not stopped from its aggression against Ukraine, then Taiwan could be the next Ukraine in Asia, because you know, that would give encouragement that countries can with impunity go into other countries, launch attacks, occupy them without the international community being able to do anything. So in that sense, some sort of an example has to be set that Russia needs to be pushed back, and its aggression needs to be ensured that the aggression does not succeed, and all the territories that have been taken by Russia from Ukraine, that they are returned back, that they are obtained back by Ukraine.
Last question, Ambassador, before you wind up. I mean, Shangri-La dialogue being attended by representatives from dozens of countries, I mean, including China and US. What is the global impact and the significance, if you can sum it up?
You know, basically, this is the 20th meeting of the Shangri-La dialogue. It takes place every year on around the beginning of June. You would remember that in 2018, Prime Minister Modi had also addressed the Shangri-La dialogue when we had given our own perspective on the Indo-Pacific, because there were very many question marks on that particular issue. So I think the challenges of the world, the challenges of the global community, and particularly the challenges that the countries in the region are facing, I think those are the issues that are discussed at Shangri-La dialogue, and it is an attempt is made to bring down the temperature, to promote understanding, to promote dialogue, promote communication, so that no miscalculations or accidents take place. So in that sense, it is a very ideal platform. It's a very ideal forum where countries can get together and either at the plenary session or even better so on the sidelines of the plenaries, they can have bilateral discussions and try to resolve their the problems and the issues that they might be facing.
Ideal platform where countries can get together and solve their issues. Asia's top security summit. We'll end it here. Thank you, Ambassador Sajjan Har, for giving us your precious time.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you.
All right, we are heading for a very short break. On the other side, more stories. Keep watching News Connect.
Your window to rising India. India's voice on global platforms. Latest news from India and around the world. In-depth analysis of global headlines. Watch DD India in your country. Available for downlink in Central Asian countries. STTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 17 at 93.5 degrees east. HDTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 10 at 83 degrees east. For technical details, scan here. Switch to DD India now.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind.
India.
Salam India. Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Nous
sommes l'Inde.
Nahnu hunud.
India.
Ma Hindi Hasti.
Mung Hindiani.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Welcome back. You're watching News Connect. Some more stories now. After a week of negotiations, around 170 countries agreed to develop a first draft by November of what could become the first global treaty to curb plastic pollution by the end of next year. Country delegations, NGOs and industry representatives gathered in Paris this week for the second round of UN talks towards a legally binding pact to halt the explosion of plastic waste, which is projected to almost triple by 2060, with around half ending up in landfill and less than a fifth recycled. By the session's close on Friday, countries agreed to prepare a zero draft text of what would become a legally binding plastics treaty and to work between negotiation sessions on key questions such as the scope and principles of the future treaty. The zero draft text would reflect options from wide-ranging positions of different countries by the start of the next round of talks to be held in Nairobi, Kenya in November.
My appeal to you at the beginning of this session was that you make Paris count. You have done so, and by providing us collectively with a mandate for a zero draft and intersessional work. Much work still remains ahead, but I'm confident that members will show determination to forge ahead in a spirit of cooperation as we transition from Paris to Nairobi.
The EU and its member states are fully committed and determined to this process, and we look forward to constructively engage with all parties to move our process forward. Time is short. We need to be bold and innovative and act without delay. We must work together in a cooperative and constructive spirit to end plastic pollution.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met his Brazilian counterpart Mauro Vieira and held discussions on advancing India and Brazil's cooperation in the BRICS, IPSA, G20 and United Nations frameworks. The two ministers held their talks on the sidelines of the BRICS meeting in Cape Town on Friday. Dr. S. Jaishankar said that he was hopeful of India and Brazil working together on deepening their strategic partnership. And after their meeting, Dr. S. Jaishankar tweeted, and I quote him, "Great to meet FM Mauro Vieira of Brazil on the sidelines of the BRICS meeting, discuss advancing our cooperation in the BRICS, IBSA, G20 and UN frameworks. Look forward to working together on deepening our strategic partnership," unquote. And prior to this meeting, Dr. S. Jaishankar also met Iran's Foreign Minister Hussein on the sidelines of the BRICS gathering. Dr. S. Jaishankar and his Iranian counterpart reviewed the two countries' bilateral ties and also discussed further ways to strengthen them with a special focus on Chabahar port. And the leaders also exchanged views on BRICS and SCO. Dr. S. Jaishankar is in Cape Town to participate in a conclave of the BRICS grouping, and this is what Dr. S. Jaishankar tweeted. The UN Security Council has called on warring factions in Sudan to cease hostilities. A press statement agreed by the 15-member body in New York expressed deep concern over the clashes and condemned all attacks on civilians, UN personnel and humanitarian agencies. The Council emphasized the need for the parties to immediately cease hostilities, facilitate humanitarian access and establish a permanent ceasefire arrangement, and to resume the process towards reaching a lasting, inclusive and democratic political settlement in Sudan. The Council also agreed to extend the mandate of the United Nations Integrated Transition Assistance Mission in Sudan for 6 months. The mission was established on June 2020 to provide support to Sudan during its political transition to democratic rule. Alright, staying with Sudan crisis now, clashes between warring parties continued in and around the capital Khartoum on Friday following the collapse of talks to maintain a ceasefire and ease a humanitarian crisis. Sudan saw heavy clashes between the Sudanese armed forces and the rival Rapid Support Forces in south and west of Khartoum and in the north and south of its neighboring city Omdurman. The two sides fought over strategic areas such as National Mint, the building of the country's state television, and several military bases. In addition, clashes were also intense in North Kordofan state in central Sudan. The Sudanese army delegation on Wednesday announced it would suspend its participation in the ongoing negotiations with the paramilitary RSF in the Saudi Arabian port city of Jeddah, saying the move comes as a rejection of the continued and repeated violations by the RSF of the short-term ceasefire agreement. Alright, some more international stories. US President Joe Biden said he will sign into law on Saturday the bill passed by Congress this week to raise the US debt ceiling and curb spending. In his first Oval Office address to the nation, Biden voiced rare praise for his Republican counterparts, saying they operated in good faith. He said a US default on his $31.4 trillion debt on Monday's deadline would have been catastrophic. The bill passed 63-36 in the Senate on Thursday night, a day after it easily cleared the House of Representatives. The deal suspends the debt limit until 1st January 2025 and caps non-defense spending while expanding work requirements for food and healthcare assistance, amongst other provisions.
Look, the only way American democracy can function is through compromise and consensus. And that's what I work to do as your president. You know, to forge bipartisan agreement where it's possible and where it's needed. Passing this budget agreement was critical. The stakes could not have been higher. If we had failed to reach an agreement on the budget, there were extreme voices threatening to take America for the first time in our 247-year history into default on our national debt. Nothing would have been more irresponsible.
And marking Gun Violence Awareness Day in Springfield, Virginia, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris urged Congress to pass common sense reforms to curb gun violence in the country on Friday and said that solutions do exist. It just requires elected leaders in the United States Congress and in state legislatures to pass common sense reforms. U.S. President Joe Biden has urged Congress to ban assault weapons, expand background checks and implement other measures. According to the Gun Violence Archive, as of May 31st, over 17,000 people in the U.S. had died in 2023 as a result of guns, including by suicide. The number includes 109 children under the age of 12.
In this very moment in our country, 1 in 5 Americans has lost a family member to gun violence. 1 in 5. In the 153 days of this year, there have been more than 260 mass shootings. Solutions do exist. It just requires elected leaders in the United States Congress and in state legislatures to pass common sense reforms.
South Korea's Defense Minister Lee Jong-sup said on Saturday that some countries were ignoring North Korea's unlawful behavior, which he said threatens to weaken United Nations sanctions against its missile and nuclear programs. This creates holes in sanctions against North Korea passed at the UN Security Council. Lee said in a speech at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, Asia's top security summit. China and Russia on Friday ignored a US call for the UN Security Council to condemn North Korea for its recent attempt to launch a satellite and instead blamed the United States for increasing tension on the Korean peninsula.
Some countries are ignoring North Korea's unlawful behaviors that violates the rule-based international order. This creates holes in sanctions against North Korea passed at the UN Security Council.
기존 유엔 안보리 결의를
Meanwhile, the United States on Friday called for the UN Security Council to condemn North Korea for its attempted satellite launch this week and to urge Pyongyang not to conduct another launch. A diplomat from Washington's UN mission, Robert Wood, made the call at a UN Security Council meeting called by the United States and allies to discuss Wednesday's failed launch, which the US said violated multiple UN resolutions. Following the launch, North Korea's Kim Yo-jong, the sister of leader Kim Jong-un, said her country would soon put a military spy satellite into orbit and vowed that Pyongyang would increase its military surveillance capabilities.
It is with considerable frustration that we find ourselves back in the Council to discuss yet another DPRK provocation. The United States condemns in the strongest possible terms the DPRK's May 31 reconnaissance satellite launch. This launch may have failed, but it was launched in brazen violation of multiple Security Council resolutions, raised tensions, and risked destabilizing the already sensitive security situation in the region and beyond. This Council cannot ignore the DPRK's failed launches as they allow the DPRK to learn about its capability gaps and determine how to advance its unlawful WMD and ballistic missile programs accordingly.
All right, talk about national update. This year, Indian government under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi completed 9 years. There are the government's achievements in education, economy, employment, infrastructure, countering terrorism and various other sectors. All right, we'll talk about education sector first. PM Modi's government brought national education policy after nearly 4 decades. 7 new IIMs established, bringing the total to 20 as of 2022. And number of AIMS tripled, bringing total to 23, and 7 new IITs opened across the country. Total IITs now stand at 23. And 390 new universities were established. 5 times more Eklavya residential schools were sanctioned since 2014 as compared to earlier. And if you talk about the finance sector, IMF recognized India as the fastest growing major economy in the world Also, India emerged as preferred investment hub with FDI of $83.57 billion the financial year 2021 and 2022. So, IMF recognized India as the fastest growing major economy in the world, and India emerged as preferred investment hub with the FDI of $83.57 billion. And 46% of global real-time digital payments happened in India in 2022. Also, a 27.1 lakh crore Atmanirbhar Bharat package during COVID helped save economy. And record $770.18 billion of goods and services were exported in financial year 2022-2023. Over rupees 25 lakh crore directly transferred into beneficiary bank accounts. Alright, if we talk about the employment sector, PM Modi's government trained 1.37 crore people under PM Kaushal Vikas Yojana. 23 lakh direct and indirect jobs were created by tech startups in 2017 to 2021. And 1.2 crore new EPFO accounts were added in 2021-2022 despite having a pandemic, and 4.78 crore new EPFO subscribers were added between 2017 and January 2023. Now, talking about the infrastructure development, under PM Modi's government, number of operational airports also doubled from 74 in 2014 to 148 in 2023. Metro rail is now no longer limited to big cities, with metro rail projects reaching to more than 20 cities now. And 500% increase in road transport and highway budget allocation since 2014. 400 world-class Vande Bharat trains to be manufactured, with 18 trains already in operation. And PM Gati Shakti created to provide multi-modal connectivity infrastructure. Also, 3.28 lakh kilometers of rural roads built since 2014. And in countering terrorism, government performed exceptionally well, as no major terrorist attacks in Indian cities in non-conflict zones. India made terrorism a global issue and is leading global discussions on this issue. Also, 2 surgical strikes were carried out against Pakistan in 2016 and 2019. If we talk about health sector, 4.54 crore new hospital admissions under Ayushman Bharat were done. More than 1.59 lakh Ayushman Bharat health and wellness centers were also created. Not only this, 15 new AIIMS and 225 medical colleges were added. About 70,000 medical seats were added since 2014. And more than 9,000 Jan Aushadhi Kendras were made operational, 9,304 to be precise. Over 220 crore COVID vaccine doses were administered. And in energy sector, 2.86 crore electricity connections under Saubhagya were given. Renewable energy capacity more than doubled since 2014. And solar energy installed capacity grown 2,300% since 2014. Nearly 62% reduction in solar energy tariffs since 2014. Also, 35 lakh agricultural pumps to be solarized under PM Kusum. 36.86 crore LED bulbs were distributed under Ujala scheme. Now, Palli in Jammu and Kashmir became India's first carbon neutral panchayat. World's largest solar park of over 2,200 megawatt commission in Bhadla, Rajasthan. And taking a look at the international diplomacy, India took over the G20 presidency on December 1st, 2022. Theme of India's G20 presidency is Vasudev Kutumbakam, was widely appreciated. And India assumed monthly rotating presidency of UNSC for second time in its 2-year tenure. India hosted the 90th General Assembly of Interpol. And finally, in defence sector, India's defence exports reached an all-time high, surging from rupees 686 crore in financial year 2022-2023, and the exports reached more than 85 countries with 100 firms exporting defense products. And export procedures were simplified, also made industry friendly with online export authorization, curtailing delays and bringing ease of doing business. And Atmanirbhar Bharat initiatives encourage indigenous design development and manufacturing expenditure on defense procurement from foreign sources reduced. A month after Buddha Purnima, Sri Lanka today celebrates Poson Poya. The festival marks the introduction of Buddhism in the island over 2000 years ago. Let's take a look at the festivities across the island, especially at the Minihantel and Anuradhapura.
Sri Lanka is immersed in the festivities of Poson Poya Day today. The festival marks the arrival of Buddhism in the country over 2000 years ago and holds immense importance for the Buddhist community. Poson Poya Day stands as the second most significant Buddhist celebration in Sri Lanka following Vesak. Celebrated on the full moon day of June, the festival commemorates the introduction of Buddhism to Sri Lanka by Emperor Ashoka's son Arahat Mahinda in 236 BC. The main centers of celebration are the ancient monastic complex at Mihintale and Anuradhapura, which attract large crowds of pilgrims. Devotees ascend to the summit of the rock where Arahat Mahinda delivered his profound sermons honoring the origins of Buddhism in Sri Lanka. The celebrations across the island feature mass religious observances and illuminations. During the Poson period, various religious activities are organized across Sri Lanka, including silk campaigns, bodhi pujas and dansalas, where free food and beverages are distributed to the devotees. The pivotal moment when Emperor Ashoka's son, Arahat Mahinda, converted King Devanampiya Tissa to Buddhism has a major significance for Sri Lanka. The festival not only symbolizes spirituality and historical legacy connecting India and Sri Lanka, but also showcases the cultural heritage and deep devotion of the people. For DD India, Ahmed Moin Farooqi from Mihintale.
Alright, that's all we have in this edition of News Connect. You stay tuned for more news and updates. Namaskar.